A very warm welcome. Today we have with us Mr. Santanu Joshi, who is the Platform Security Architect CISO at Rockwell Automation. A very warm welcome, sir. Thank you for joining us at CXOTVnews.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me to this session.
It's our pleasure. Okay, before we actually begin with the entire discussion, especially around the automation industry and how cybersecurity is concerned around it, so we would actually like to know from you how your journey has been so far over the past years, and if you can share some insight with us, XOT.
Yeah, sure. So I have been working into cybersecurity as well as into information security for almost 19 years now. Journey has been quite interesting. So I started with network on the network side, that moved into firewall, managing the whole firewall, then audit. And then moving to data privacy, and now working on as a solution architect as well as platform security architect, working on different solution on cloud as well as the on-prem. So it's a quite a journey for almost 19 years, and learned a lot of things. A lot of things has changed. Earlier we have to have everything on-prem. Now we have cloud kind of environment that we have. Yeah, and it is changing. So the security, if you look at the whole security life cycle, is kind of a changing from step by step, and every step had a new learning to it. So yeah, it was a quite interesting journey till now, and let's see how it goes in further in future.
Absolutely. I think it's about maybe 2 decades of experience that you have had. And now we are honored to have a discussion around especially how the industries are evolving in today's state. So in the context of industrial automation industry, if you can actually elaborate on some of the unique cybersecurity challenges and considerations that organizations in this sector typically face.
Yeah, if you look at the whole automation industry or manufacturing, or you talk about industry, so the security paradigm is kind of different as per we have a normal IT security kind of a thing. The environment is quite difficult. We have edge devices, we have a lot of equipment that we need to protect, not just the like firewall or other thing, but there are a lot of other things like edge devices is there. Then we have converters and gateways, which is there, that add a lot of complexity in the whole security thing. And the challenges are quite different, because if you look at the edge devices kind of old, then you have issue related to the vulnerability management, how we are going to patch that edge devices. Also, if you look at the industrial automation, we have IoT services which is coming up, and it has all of different kind of security challenges, like how we are collecting the data from edge devices, moving to the cloud. Are there encryption is there, or is there any kind of access management have been put in place, how we are authenticating that particular devices. So these are some of the challenges is there. And also it's a multi-tenant environment. If you look at the whole cloud thing, it's a multi-tenant environment, how the data segregation is there. Also we have different regulation that we have to follow. If we are using in Europe or US, they have different regulation that we have to follow, as well as data privacy law, which has the need to be there. So these are some of the challenges that I see is coming up when we move into industrial automation kind of environment. Apart from that, if you look at the industrial automation, it is going from 2.3, 4, and we have coming up 4G or 5G kind of environment, which is adding more complexity on the whole thing. And yeah, it is quite changing, and it is not you can't say that it's a static environment. It's a kind of a dynamic environment, and things are changing every. Let's say if you talk about every shop floor to shop floor has a different challenges to it, and we need to understand the challenges and start working on the different solution part of it.
Right. I mean, especially with so much of technological advancements and transformations that we are seeing, cybersecurity has been a critical concern for most businesses in today's era.
Yep.
Even when we talk about digital transformation, we have seen that it is actually a driving force for manufacturing. So, how do you see the integration of digital technologies impacting the overall security landscape with industrial automation?
Yeah, so if you look at there are two parts. One is basically the IT part, which is there, and then we have operational, which is OT part, which is operational technology. So it's a kind of two different technology that we have, two different skill set of people, and to integrate both this thing is kind of a challenge, because they both work on two different protocols is kind of a different. They work on two different technology part of it. So integration is kind of a challenges. Also interpretability, how we can interpretability the both the technology which can interact with each other, because they are different, work on different protocols and different services kind of a thing. So that's one of the challenges. As when you start doing the integration part of it, we need to understand what kind of skill sets that we have. The OT skill sets is kind of a different than industrial, or maybe talk about local IT thing is kind of a different. So this is also one of the challenges that we have. And to integrate both this technology at a single point of thing, we need lot of we can say brainstorming that need to be put in place. What are the technology that we can use, how, and also it act the complexity when you have moving to the cloud kind of environment, because OT environment is kind of very static, it doesn't change very frequently. So, and in IT side it's change very frequently. So we need to understand how we can bridge that, basically the gap. And when we do indication, there are a lot of loopholes comes in the picture. What there are a lot of gaps which can be identified, and how we are closing that particular gap in terms of using new technology, using new let's say using new skill sets on what solution that we need to put in place. So these are some of the challenges that I see in terms of when we try to integrate IT and OT to in a single frame of let's say technology, because both the technology is kind of different, and we need to understand how we can integrate that.
So, we are seeing so much of trend that we are considering when it comes to OT and IT convergence, and how that can be implemented in industrial automation. So, how do you think an organization successfully bridge these traditional separate domains, as you were mentioning, while actually maintaining a robust security measure?
Yeah, sure. So when we talk about this convergence part of it, and what kind of a cybersecurity practices that we have to put in place, because when you talk about integration of IT and OT environment, so they work on a two different technology platforms. So each work doesn't work on a different the same protocol. So they work on different protocol. The whole environment is kind of a different. So let's take an example. There's a cyber attack on a power plant, which can black out the whole description of blackout, do the blackout, and disrupt the whole critical infrastructure. So we need to understand how effectively we can implement cybersecurity measure in terms of technology, in terms of policy, procedure, safeguarding against all the cyber threat, which include implementation of firewall, encryption, multi-layer factor authentication. We also need to train employees how to OT and IT will basically converge, what kind of solution that we have to put in place. Also, we need to see what kind of automation that we can put in place in terms of fixing the vulnerabilities on the OT side as well as an IT side, how that thing need to be done. Also, we need to prioritize what kind of integration that we have to put in place. Because if you look at the whole IT and OT environment, it's kind of it's a different environment. So we need to understand how we can prioritize the thing, and then we start doing the implementation part of it.
So, when we are talking about this, also at the same time, ensuring the resilience of maybe a critical system is very paramount. So,
Correct.
What strategies and best practices can be applied to maintain the availability as well as the integrity of industrial control system, which is ICS, in the case of cyber threat? If you can share some insight on that.
Yeah, sure. So if you look at the whole IT and OT kind of environment, there are a lot of risks. There are a lot of risks because each environment would have a different vulnerabilities, and each let's say take an example of IT would have vulnerability related to the system and the network. And when you talk about OT devices, it would be edge devices which is connected on the shop floor. So would we have a different, let's say, what would we have a different environment and different vulnerability to understand. So we need to understand what kind of risk which introduced when we start doing the implementation of whole IT and OT convergence. So that we need to understand how we can implement the risk assessment part of it, understanding the risk, and then we start doing the resilience, which is basically how availability. This talks about availability, and let's say more of a how the environment would be available 24/7. The user or the people who are working on the shop floor would be there. So we need to understand We need to conduct a regular testing, simulate that, identify vulnerability, weaknesses of the system, how we can simulate that on a test environment and start doing the looking into how we can implement some of the controls to it. Additional is basically we need to have a comprehensive disaster recovery plan, because if you look at the IT system, they have some disaster recovery. OT system would have different disaster recovery. So we need to understand what kind of a comprehensive disaster recovery plan that we have been put in place, which can fit for both the environment, just not IT and also the OT part of it. That's also one of the things that we need to put in place. Apart from that, we need to implement a lot of strong access control in picture, because if IT access control and OT access control would be a different. So we need to implement how the access control need to be put in place, how the data encryption happening on the cloud, on the shop floor, or on the on-prem kind of thing. That is also one of the thing. Regular monitoring of the system, because that is also very much important. If the system goes down, that's basically implement this basically affect the whole availability part of it. That's we need to understand how we can monitor the whole system, not just the IT, but the OT devices, which is there on the shop floor. So these are some of the measures that we have to put in place. But there are challenges. If we look at the whole environment, there are a lot of couple of challenges that have been if you start implementing this thing, because there are a lot of there are not a lot of skill sets which is not available from the OT part of it. So we need to understand how we can match the skills here, how we can train the resources to cater to that particular environment. So that is something which is I see one of the challenges in OT side also.
So there's, I think, a lot of, merger required in order to get the convergence for IT and OT to come together and be a better fruitful tool. So, also when we are talking about manufacturing industry, supply chain vulnerability, especially as seen during the times of COVID, can have cascading effects. So, how should organizations approach the security of their supply chains, and what measures can be taken to safeguard against cybersecurity disruptions?
Yeah, so if we talk about supply chain issue, there are a lot, not just the COVID. There is a Ukraine war which is going on. There's another one which started very recently, 2 days back. There are a lot of restriction. Let's say there are a lot of issues when we go into this kind of supply chain issue. And the supply chain is not just about the availability of environment, but also the people. That is also one of the part of it. So we need to understand what kind of where we are procuring the software, or where we are procuring the hardware, where we are procuring the whole thing. So we need to do a third party audit, understand what kind of security measure that they have put in place. We also enforce our security measure that they that ask them to implement it from our side. That's one of the things we need to conduct regular audit part of it, how the third party audit is basically happening, and also we need to understand we should have a different let's say for one technology we should have a couple of other vendors that need to be there as a backup. Let's say if one vendor goes down, then we should have another vendor which can take up the place and start doing the implementation part of it. That's also one of the things that we need to implement. Take an example, about most of the manufacturing happening is in China, and when the COVID hit, it's basically disrupted the whole supply chain, because most of the hardware manufactured in China itself at that point of time. So we need to understand where we can start another manufacturing plant, or some other a local vendor that we can look for, and start doing the evaluation part of it, because selecting a vendor is a kind of a very tedious job. Not just selecting a vendor, but also we need to understand what kind of quality they are bring in to us. So that is also some of the audit that we have to put in place. Third party audit need to be there, regular audit, understanding what kind of capability they have, enforcing our security policy into their environment, to make sure that they follow what we are suggesting to them. So these are some of the things that we have to put in place when we look for supply chain kind of security.
As you mentioned about security, building a skilled cybersecurity workforce is again a challenge across the industries.
Correct.
So, what approaches can organization adopt to attract and nurture cybersecurity talent in the industry, and especially in the automation sector?
Yeah, so if we look at the whole IT and OT environment, is a kind of a very challenging environment when we start doing the integration part of it. You will get a lot of people who have worked on IT environment and as well as understand the whole IT thing. But if you talk about OT, it's kind of a challenging, it's a kind of a niche skill, and getting a people from outside is quite difficult. So we need to understand what kind of a uh, we can start looking into some people who can work in the OT environment, start training them on different technology that is basically used in the OT side. We also have I think the one of the key element which is kind of a missing, even if you look at the whole college curriculums, everything, they don't teach IT. They teach IT, but they won't teach OT kind of environment, because it's kind of a very close environment. People doesn't know most of the thing about how the OT environment basically works. So that is also one of the things that we have to put into a college seminar, where we can give some kind of a lecture how the OT environment is, what kind of challenges that they face. And then it's not a if you look at the whole OT environment, we didn't find most of the people when we start looking for fill up any vacancy or any job opening. Most of the people that we get a resume is basically from the IT side, not from the OT side, and that is also one of the pain point, because the talent is not available in the market. So we need to train them inside. We need to see what kind of a people who are working on our environment or IT team, where we can pick them up, train them up, and bring up to the speed what OT basically works, how the shop floor basically works, how the connectivity is basically happening. So these are the things that we need to put in place in terms of organization level, and also we need to see how we can nurture people who has a ability to understand how the OT basically works. So these are something that we have to put in place when we talk about the OT environment.
So now coming to a different segment, especially to the upcoming days, in your opinion, we would actually like to understand what would be the job security and tech priority focus areas in the coming 2 to 4 years.
Yeah, so from the manufacturing side or even from automation point of view, so if you look at everything is kind of a digital night now, right? So after COVID, everything is moving. We are moving everything into cloud. So these are some of the issues when we start moving into cloud. Manufacturing is kind of a environment, or industrial automation kind of environment. Everything is a kind of closed environment. So everything is in the shop floor. So if you look at the whole data which is there in the shop floor, so moving that data into cloud is one of the challenges that we have. We have an IoT devices, which is an edge devices, which basically collect the data and move into cloud. So saying this is very simple, but at a ground level, when we start doing the implementation, it's a kind of a multi-tenant environment. How the access management need to be put in place. That's one of the challenge that we have. It's a multi-tenant environment, and how we are segregating the data. Let's say a manufacturing client which is in China, and the organization is in Europe. So there is a regulation how we are going to store the data, either in EU or in China, because in China, if you store the data, it remains in China. It doesn't go out of the China. So that is also some of the regulation the manufacturing organization has to face in terms of regulation point of view. That's one of the challenges that I see in coming future. Apart from that, there are a lot of issues with internal system that we have, because if you talk about the shop floor, it doesn't get monitored. It doesn't monitor the whole shop floor. The shop floor is just monitored if the device goes down. So we need to understand how we can monitor the shop floor in terms of attack which is happening on the shop floor. That is also one of the things that we have to put in place. So I told you, we are moving into cloud, right? Everything is moving into cloud. So how we can implement some of the cloud related activity or cloud security related activity on our system. So that is also one of the things, like using a CSI benchmark or NIST framework that we have to follow. These are some of the challenges I see coming in future and for a couple of more years now.
So now, looking forward, what you has in mind? What are the most pressing cybersecurity challenges and opportunities you foresee for the industrial automation industry? And what strategies can help organizations stay ahead in addressing them?
Yeah. So, for example, if you look at the manufacturing plant, okay. So if we talk about IT system has a whole control inventory management system which is there. From the OT side, we do not have that kind of inventory thing. So that is one of the things that we have to put in place as a kind of this opportunity, because OT system is not a homogeneous, as a heterogeneous environment. So every shop floor would have different devices. So that's inventory part of it. That's also need to be there, because why we need inventory? Because we need to patch the system. We need to remove the vulnerability which is there in the system, and that is also one of the key thing that we need to look for in future also. Uh, to 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 be ahead from all this thing, we need to have a robust a cyber security framework for industrial automation need to be there in place, not just for the IT system or the OT system, but also you need to have what are different product and services that we are using. Take an example, we are using an industrial data platform or a data platform which will basically collect the data. How we are collecting the data, how we are analyzing data, who have an access to this particular data. So that is also something framework that we have to put in place. How we are doing a risk assessment part of it. This, if you have a comprehensive risk assessment framework or comprehensive security policy procedure, that will basically take care of all this particular activity, and which will keep us ahead from all any kind of cybersecurity attacks or anything which is happening on the shore notes.
All right. So, having a robust framework and compliance policies are very important for the industries, and especially in terms of automation. So, thank you so much, sir, for joining at CXOTV and sharing such insightful knowledge with the audience. It was a pleasure having you.
Yeah, thanks for your time, and it was a pleasure talking to you about this industrial automation and the security related activity.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
For more updates from CXO TV, please like and subscribe to our channel.